Let's start with some other big news, and we'll start with the University of Florida Gators basketball program, which indeed is in some hot water yet again. Right now, there's an assistant coach that's accused of sexual assault and former player for the Gators, too. Taurean Green is basically under fire right now. There's a woman who's asked to remain anonymous based on the fear of retaliation, reporting to the school's Title IX office that in March of last year, Green arranged a meeting with her in the athletic facilities where he allegedly kissed her and tried to put his hand down, her hand down his pants. Yeah, I think that's the way to say it. According to the copy of the complaint reviewed by ESPN, she pulled his hand away and said no, and then he tried again. Again, these are allegations. I want to be clear on that. But the university is also investigating another incident back in September that included their head coach as well. So here is the statement from the University of Florida. The law prohibits us from commenting on the existence of status of investigations. University of Florida taking these matters seriously and conducting a thorough and deliberate process. Also ensures due process for everyone. Again, allegations don't mean anyone is guilty. These are just something that obviously is very disturbing in the world of sports and college basketball as well. Speaking of Title IX, on the flip side, here is some good news. More money being paid out, name, image, and likeness in the form of $20.5 million coming in direct payments to athletes as one part of a pending antitrust settlement. Many schools from those conferences are trying to get that money to athletes because they generate the most revenue. Football and men's basketball part of that. In some cases, the directors have shared they want to give 75% of that money to their football players. So we'll see how this money is divvied up. But this antitrust lawsuit continues and Title IX getting involved as well. No surprise there. Could LeBron James continue to play basketball, but just not in the NBA? Really fascinating story coming out here. His agent, Maverick Carter, his business manager, Rich Paul, his agent, his business manager, Maverick Carter, has been enlisted as an advisor with a group of investors that are seeking to raise approximately $5 billion to form a new basketball league. It would be an international basketball league that serves to rival the NBA. It has private equity funds, of course, so we don't know exactly what those are going to include. Very similar to how we saw the separate golf tournament, the LIV golf tournament. Could this be something similar? We will see. But no question, if Maverick Carter's involved, you would have to think LeBron James could potentially be involved, still playing basketball, but maybe not in the NBA. Could that ever happen? We will see. All right, the Dolphins are hosting the first ever game in Madrid. That is right. We went from Brazil to Germany, and now we're going to Madrid. That's where the Dolphins are going to play next season. No word on who they'll play. They'll announce that coming up in a couple of months. Tom Brady is going to continue his role with Fox and the Raiders. It was announced yesterday. There was thought to be some potential conflict with him owning a small part of the Raiders, but I guess there is not. Texans Joe Mixon missed practice. He's questionable to play against the Chiefs. I think most insiders in the NFL are pointing toward him playing tomorrow. And also, bad news for Zay Flowers. He missed practice again ahead of the Bills on Sunday, listed as questionable, but it doesn't look like he's going to play on Sunday night. All right, the National Basketball Association, it was the game, at least of the month of January, as Oklahoma City took on Cleveland. Not really much of a contest. SGA had 40 points. They win the game against the Cavs. Final 131-114. They closed the first quarter on a 22-2 run. They took a 32-14 lead and never looked back. Mark Daigneault, Kenny Atkinson, those are the head coaches. Daigneault, of course, the head coach of Oklahoma City. Atkinson of Cleveland. Daigneault said he knew what the stakes were going into the game, but didn't prepare any differently.
Yeah, I mean, really good job. I thought it was nothing new for us in terms of the way we attacked and stuff like that. We played small before, so we just had to double down on that package. And then I thought the carryover from Cleveland, we played them on short turnaround, and we carried over some really good things in the game plan where we really executed, especially early. And then they zoned us quite a bit down the stretch of the game last time, and I thought they went to that in the first half, and our attacks were really sharp against it. So I thought there was improvement there over the last 10 days as well, which was encouraging.
They really put the stamp on with what they do, and they so it was that end, and then and then when they just started getting layups in transition, that got them going, and obviously they're started out 9 for 15 from three, so it was just an avalanche, and we really never responded, just a total domination.
Back to the NBA we go. DeMar DeRozan, huge game last night for the Sacramento Kings. 132 to 127 the final. Really close game considering the number was 4. Kings now 21-20 as they defeat the Rockets. Ime Udoka obviously not happy with this outcome.
I don't know about frustrating. We weren't playing well enough. We were pretty sloppy offensively, just some unforced turnovers, and then defensively too many mistakes. So to be back in the game and give ourselves a chance at the end is a good thing to me with how poorly we played overall. So look at that as a positive. We kept fighting, got back in the game, and just too many mistakes when we had chances. I don't know if we deserved to win this game, but the sloppy turnovers, mistakes, miscues defensively. I mean, 42 point fourth quarter for both teams, and the only way a team is going to score that much on us is if we're fouling shooters and making some mistakes there. But love the fight, getting back into the game, and then a bunch of ticky-tack touch calls at the end, which were the opposite of how they let us play the whole game.
As far as tonight's NBA slate, there's no question what everyone will be watching, and that is whether or not Jimmy Butler will return to the Miami Heat. No one really knows for sure. He is not on the injury list. I saw that tweet yesterday, but I don't know that that means a damn thing because Butler certainly keeps asking for a trade. No one truly knows if he's going to be in the Heat lineup tonight, and they could use him because they play the Denver Nuggets. Meanwhile, our producer Frank is going to Madison Square Garden to see the Knicks tonight. Dante DiVincenzo is going to be out, and Karl Anthony Towns, by the way, may not play either. So, of course, Frank is going, so that means a big L is coming your way. Sorry, Frank. Minnesota in Michigan last night, one of the best college basketball games of the week. 10.5-point dog were the Golden Gophers last night. They end up beating Michigan on a wild finish and a 3-point shot, 84-81. I had no idea, and I bet you didn't either, that Minnesota was 0-15 against top 25 teams. So they snapped that streak, and it seems like their head coach, Ben Johnson, was very well aware of that.
I just said, a couple of things. It took 4 years to finally get something to go our way a little bit. And, I think it was, it was obviously meant to be. My guys have this togetherness. And I've been telling people that we're getting better and nobody probably believes me. I've been telling people that we're this close and nobody probably believes me. My players included.
Two other huge underdogs win in college basketball last night. The first was Oregon, 8.5-point dogs. They beat Gonzaga, number 16, 97-89. And Rutgers ends up beating Nebraska, 85-82. They were 8.5-point underdogs. And also Northwestern picks up a win against Maryland. I know not as sexy as those other games, but that definitely is the case. And folks, we did not even have a chance to get into the college football national championship. That is coming up, of course, on Monday night between Ohio State and Notre Dame. We'll preview that for you coming up this weekend and, of course, Monday as well. Welcome back to Newswire. We got Sam McQuillan in from Legal Sports Report. We're going to dive into a number of topics, including the success of the public this football season in sports betting, how it may affect one company. Let's bring in Sam. Sam, happy Friday. Thanks for coming on the show here. Let's get started. Missouri was the one state that made the big headlines in 2024. They legalized sports betting, but legalization doesn't mean that sports betting initially launches. You got to wait a little bit. And it seems like, according to the article from Pat over at Legal Sports Report that you guys posted, that it seems like the summer now is the launch date for Missouri. I know they were hoping for Super Bowl, then they were hoping for maybe the NCAA tournament time, but it does seem that they're just trying to get ahead of next football season, at least from what I read.
Yeah, you got it right, Craig. Absolutely. Missouri legalized sports betting only in November, so it's just a couple months ago. So I know anytime sports betting gets legalized, everyone's, can I do it? Everyone downloads the apps. You see this huge surge, companies tracking, people trying to log in, especially in a state like Missouri, which borders a couple of other states with sports betting. But Super Bowl turnaround would have been honestly one of the quickest turnarounds we've ever seen with this kind of thing before. They're now targeting the middle of the summer. The ballot proposition that legalized sports betting in November via a majority vote by the people. It had it written in the ballot that it had to start by December at the very latest. So when you look at other states like Maryland or even New York, New Jersey, some of those states have taken up to 2 years from legalizing sports betting to then launching it. So in Missouri's case, while you won't be able to get it by the Super Bowl, you will have the option to go to other states around there. They should get it during the summer, which will be then the big timeline, the big target there will be, can we get everything ahead of next football season? So sort of the worst case scenario would have been launching mid playoffs last year. We've seen some states do that, but the fact that Missourians will have sports betting before next football season, that's the real key target here that sports books especially will be happy about. So essentially what has to happen before, it goes live is the Missouri Gaming Commission needs to figure out the licensing process, and they need to do a ton of paperwork. They need to issue regulations and rules so the sports books know what they can and can't do. In some states you have certain bets that are legal, other states you don't. You have different licensing requirements. You want to make sure there's no bad actors coming in, like a state we'll talk about a little bit later with some people who maybe were shady about their business. So, if you're in Missouri, you don't get it by the Super Bowl, but it's still going to be one of the quickest turnarounds we've seen. So got to be thankful for that.
Yeah, and who knows what other states even legalize sports betting this year. As of right now, really nothing on the table for that, which would be a first in sports betting was legalized here in the United States. Okay, so let's get to the latest and a report here from BetMGM, Sam. It should be no surprise to people who pay attention to sports betting, watch our network throughout, that this year, unlike other years in the National Football League, the favorites won and covered quite a bit, especially the big favorites in the NFL, 6.5, 7, 8, 10. I mean, that's sort of unprecedented in this world of sports betting. Usually it's the dogs that covering, and then they build another hotel in Las Vegas, as I like to say. But this year, not the case. The books took a little bit of a hit. What's this report from BetMGM? Does it change anything for any of these sports books taking the hit this year?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like you say, we usually don't have this kind of thing happen, but I think one thing that I think everyone is learning from this mass legal expansion of sports betting with everything going digital online is we really have no idea what to expect now. We have an unprecedented run of favorites winning in the NFL. In the past, you might think that, okay, yeah, the public is going to bet heavy favorites. So that means that the sports books are really hurting. We even saw this on the Super Bowl last year, where the public won pretty much every big bet on the spread, the total. But then the books actually ended up cleaning up because of player props and same game parlays. Right. But not all sports books are created equal. BetMGM, they came out and said, despite this crazy run that's impacting other companies like FanDuel, a company we talk about as like pretty much the leader in the space. It's impacting them pretty hard. BetMGM came out and said, we're not really expecting to be hit that much from these results. And it's a pretty interesting reason why. It's not why you would think, because they're pushing more same game parlays, because they're pushing player props better. While they are pushing all of that stuff, they spent most of this last year and a half really doing a lot of investing and building new products, trying to make those parlay products that compete with those big dogs that have already kind of done their investments and are really now trying to push those on people. So what that meant that MGM couldn't do was really go out and be aggressive. You don't see as many commercials, you don't see as many promotions. So they're kind of saying, because we were investing and didn't push the product out so much, we weren't pushing out a product that was so customer friendly. We had, we lost less money on that end. So it's kind of an interesting financial way that they ended up benefiting from what was pretty much not a plan for them. They didn't want to make this another year of investing. They wanted to go out and compete with the other sports books. They've been third place for a long time, but in this crazy world of gambling and this crazy world of finance, this is how this stuff works sometimes, where maybe a mistake ends up kind of benefiting you in the back end. So we'll see. The football season's not over yet. I'm sure the books will be really hoping to figure it out. Come as we talk about the playoffs coming up and or the additional rounds, and then the Super Bowl eventually. But interesting to see different companies kind of maneuvering or navigating the space in a different way. And BetMGM, not a company we talk about in terms of being at the top. So a good article for them right here.
Okay, and then finally, an article that I think needs some explanation here. I saw this story when it happened, Sam, and then I read it, wasn't completely understanding it. I now read your guys' article. It's making me a little bit more enlightened on the situation, but I'll start, you'll finish. Easiest way to do this. And by the way, you can read about this story and more at legalsportsreport.com. There's a company called Intralot. They run the lottery system in Washington, D.C. They were being sued. They were apparently allegedly defrauding another company here, $6.5 million to actually the Washington, D.C. itself. Please explain this to all of my viewers here, because it took me a couple of times to get it.
Yeah, it's a really convoluted story. It's complicated to believe just because you kind of can't believe this happened. So in Washington, D.C., when they legalized sports betting, they had a bidding process for the company that would then run the sports betting app for the district. So rather than open it up to a competitive bidding process where a number of apps could enter, this company Intralot, which is a Greek company, it runs a couple of sports betting apps across the country. They had this app called Gambit DC, which, if you know anything about Gambit DC, is most people don't like it. Most people hated it. You know, the lines were terrible. It crashed during Super Bowls. It actually lost the district tons of money because nobody was using it, even though it was the only option in town. More people going offshore. Essentially, how they got the district to give them that exclusivity, the monopoly over Washington, D.C., was by telling them that they were working with this company that was contracting with locals in DC and sort of keeping it all in the city. So they're thereby providing an economic benefit to the city. That company was Veterans Service Corporation. They promised they would perform half the work of the contract. But then it came out under this investigation that actually that was not true. They were not performing half of the work, and they were essentially defrauding the city in order to get this exclusive contract. So they got hit with a $6.5 million fine, which I don't know. As far as fines go, that seems pretty light for defrauding an entire city and preventing other operators from entering. Ever since then, now you have more apps in town. FanDuel replaced it this past year, and then they added more apps in general. And ever since Intralot or Gambit DC was no longer the only game in town, the revenue that the district has collected is up about 400% year over year. So that just shows you how they are running things top to bottom. But really leaves some kind of questions into what DC was thinking, just awarding this contract without really doing any back end legwork. And now they get an extra 6.5 million out of it. But yeah, just a crazy story.
It really is. You can read about this story and everything else that Sam and I discuss here on the show, as well as all the great contributors that appear on our show each and every day here on Newswire from LegalSportsReport.com. Sam, have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy a lot of the football games this weekend. I know you will, and we'll check back with you again next week. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. You too.